O breaker of spirits, destroyer of dreams, who covers the ears to silence the screams, turn a blind eye so you'll never see the horrors of hell you've inflicted on me. Wrench out my heart and lock it away, shrouded in darkness, death, and decay. Chapter 1. Claire Wright gazed around the office, confused. Uneasiness crawled all over her as she sat on a hard wooden chair. Where was her husband, Adrian, and why was she waiting in a room inside the local asylum? The door squeaked open. A young gentleman dressed in a starched white lab coat entered. He greeted her with a polite nod and sat down at the desk. She watched intently as he removed a clipboard and pen from the top drawer. "Mrs. Wright, I'm Dr. Dandridge. This is an intake interview, and I'll be asking you some questions." "Excuse me?" Claire leaned forward in her seat. "What do you mean by an intake interview?" Dr. Dandridge smiled. "No need for alarm. This is something we do every day. It won't take long." Claire frowned. "I don't understand why I'm being interviewed. I came with my husband to deliver a hat. You interview people for that?" "Mrs. Wright, I assure you everything is fine. It's just a few questions, that's all. You can talk later about anything that concerns you." Claire stood up, indignant. "Now, I really don't understand. Why on earth will I be able to talk later?" She stepped towards the door. "Excuse me, but I need to find my husband." Dr. Dandridge bolted out of his seat, positioning himself between her and the door. "Please don't make this difficult." He guided Claire back to her seat. "Your husband left." "Without me? That's crazy. He'd never forget and leave me somewhere." Claire struggled with the rising anxiety inside her. This situation didn't seem right at all. The doctor scrutinized Claire a few moments in silence. He cleared his throat and spoke again. "I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but his intent was to have you admitted here." Claire grew pale at the words. She stared at the doctor, stunned. "Can you think of any reason at all that your husband felt you needed psychiatric care?" Panic hit her full force. "I can assure you, I have no idea why." Claire tried making sense of the events that had transpired up to now. The doctor said nothing, sitting motionless as he fixed his gaze on Claire. "Dr. Dandridge, Adrian and I have always gotten along. We've had some issues lately surrounding the death of our son, but that wouldn't be an excuse to have me put away. It makes no sense at all." "I see." The doctor scribbled a few lines on his paper. "Any moments of uncontrollable sadness or mood changes? Unable to do your housework?" Scowling, Claire answered, "What ridiculous questions! Who wouldn't be upset that their child died?" She clenched her fists. "I want out of here now. You can't keep me here. I haven't done anything." Claire found herself running in slow motion through dark, winding hallways and passages leading nowhere. Terrified, she turned a corner, tripped over something unseen, and tumbled to the floor. With a jolt, she sat upright in her bed, in a real world of darkness, not a dream. Sweat dripping down her body, leaving her faded slip of a nightgown damp and smelling mustier than ever. Such was life here at Hatchie River Asylum for the insane. She'd been here a week, and all she'd heard were screams, bitter crying, and laughter that came at the oddest times from the lips of those whose brains had been affected by insult from nature. Claire wondered if these people weren't, in fact, blessed in some small way. They weren't aware enough of their surroundings to be driven any matter by this forsaken place. Women sat for hours, their legs curled up beneath them. They stared out the windows for hours, oblivious. If they balked at all, horrid attendants retaliated. The asylum was a perfect place for letting sadistic natures run amok. Sleep had been difficult since the first night of arrival. 2 hours of tossing and turning finally turned into catching sight of the first morning rays, flashing through the flimsy curtains covering the window. "You all right?" The lady in the other bed sat up, bed springs squeaking in protest as she moved. Yes, I'm okay, Ruth. Sorry I woke you up. Claire rolled over and faced her roommate. You sure been tossing around a lot. You sick? I'm fine. Claire adjusted the sheet. I had a bad dream, that's all. Ruth shook her head. Wouldn't doubt that for 1 minute. It's hard not to have them being here and all. Claire realized for the first time that she and Ruth hadn't said much to each other except for simple pleasantries. Glancing at her roommate, Claire asked, Did you have trouble when you first came here? Couldn't imagine a soul not having trouble when they come in here. I'd be more worried if they didn't, if you ask me. You know something, I haven't been very friendly at all. A real big sourpuss. I'm sorry for that. When Claire smiled, the other lady smiled back. Ruth waved her away. Don't think nothing of it. It's partly my fault, too. I'm not much into saying a whole lot around here. Sometimes it's better to keep quiet so you don't get yelled at or hit on the head by some crazy person. And I don't just mean the ones in here like us, neither. Both women chuckled and settled back down on their beds. Claire closed her eyes and tried dozing a little longer before breakfast hours. Only a week in her life, and it seemed like she'd been here forever. Why hadn't Adrian come by for a visit? Why did he dump her off here? Had things been so bad that he felt he had no other choice?